All right. Hey, everyone. Happy holidays to you all. Let's see. I'm sure people are going to be streaming in. Happy holidays to everyone as you're joining.
I'm gonna step away for a brief second. Just
Yep.
FYI. Okay.
Yep. See you in a second. Hey, everyone. Hey, everyone who is going to be joining, hopping in. Happy holidays to you all. Happy holidays to everyone as you're joining. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds before we get started. If you are here and you want to share, where are you tuning in from? And tell us what you're most excited about to hear today. Where are you tuning in from and what are you most excited to hear about today? And have you had your coffee yet? I just realized I actually have not had anything to eat or to drink, which is probably not that good, but let's see. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So, of course, this is the Intellectual Property Protection webinar series. This is the first of four, which is sponsored by my company, the Forward Collective Group. I am Kaylin Romaine, the founder and CEO of the Forward Collective Group. I'm so excited to be able to share space with you today, and I'm looking forward to an informative session and you being able to meet some very brilliant people who are going to tell you lots of ways that you can protect your creations. Now, a little bit about me: I am an organizational psychologist, executive coach, and a founder myself. And I was inspired to create this webinar series through my own journey of intellectual property protections. I primarily have filed for trademarks, which have been incredibly helpful to my business to protect everything from special phrases I've created, my business names, and my logos, as well as some frameworks. And we're going to talk more about all of that good stuff and what all of that means shortly. But again, I just want to reemphasize that I am not just speaking the information to you all. I have experienced this, and that's what inspired me to create this series today. So I have some amazing guests with me. I'm looking at them in a tiled format, so I'm going to go start in the order that I see. And so we have Elizabeth Dougherty with the USPTO. We have Judy Yen, who is here with the Omnis Law Group. And then we have Xavier Haley, who is also here with Omnis. And I want to actually give them a chance to introduce themselves and then share more about their role and how they serve the community and founders and creators like you with intellectual property protection support. Elizabeth?
Well, Kaylin, it's a pleasure to be here today with you, Xavier, Judy, and your entire audience. On behalf of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, it's my honor and pleasure to be here to help educate, inform, and demystify the role and importance of intellectual property. Just a little bit about myself. I am a 33-year veteran of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. She has been my one and only. I started at the agency right out of my undergraduate career and started my career as a US patent examiner, examining patent applications for diverse technologies. I then received my law degree while I was an examiner, went on to do 10 years of legal policy work, and then have held a variety of positions across the agency since then. I currently serve as the Northeast Regional Outreach Director, which is really just a very long way of saying that my team and I help people. We help by providing information, assistance, education, and again, demystification of how one creates, protects, and enforces their intellectual property. So it's a pleasure to be here with these esteemed panelists and yourself. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. First of all, congratulations on 33 years. I don't know if there's anything that I've done for 33 years straight, so that is quite an accomplishment.
Thank you.
But I love that your focus is demystification because I think that that's such an important part of the conversation. I know growing up, I never would have imagined that I would have a trademark. Like that never never occurred to me as something that I could do. And so I'm so happy that the USPTO has prioritized that, because I think that it is attainable, reachable, and probably needed for so many of us who create and who start our own companies and have these amazing creations. But we're going to get more into that. The next
Excellent.
person that I see is Judy. Judy, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I am honored to be serving on this panel today to share a little bit of what I know about intellectual property law with everyone. Um, I'm a California attorney specializing in intellectual property law. My practice focuses on trademark and copyright. I help emerging companies since the beginning of my career. I help them with their intellectual property law needs and business transactional needs. So in my career, I've helped a lot of new business owners, maybe like the audience here, to really pursue their dream. And it's been really great for me to be able to be a little part of their journey. So I'm very excited today to share what I know. Um, my passion, or I would say like I really like to play pickleball in my downtime, and in my I like to paint for fun as well. And lastly, I'm a big foodie, so if anyone's interested in good restaurant in the LA area, feel free to connect with me offline.
I love that so much. You know, it's interesting. First of all, I'm a foodie as well, but girl, that's an offline conversation. I'll tell you more about that later. But it's interesting because for emerging founders in particular, I don't think we're always privy to how important it is to protect things from the start. So sometimes we feel like, hey, we need to have this fully built out thing. And if it's not all the way done and, such and such percent finished, then I'll wait. But instead, we actually should be thinking about that quite early in the journey. So thank you for your commitment to supporting emerging founders, especially being in California. Let's see, is there an echo? Okay, I think, let's see, did it go away? I think it did. Okay.
Yes.
Y'all, this is my first time live streaming, so it's like a little bit of this is testing some tech. Um but yeah, I'm so excited for your focus on emergent founders, because I think that that's just so important for people to know how important their creations are from the very beginning. So thank you, Judy. All right, last but certainly not least, Mr. Xavier Haley, please tell us a little bit about you and tell us about your intellectual property journey.
Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I'm looking forward to speaking to everyone. So, about myself, I'm actually licensed in three different states: New York, New Jersey, and Illinois, because I actually live in all three of those states. So, I'm also a registered patent attorney and also a trademark attorney. I work with entrepreneurs and business owners to protect their IP because that's the most valuable part of their business. Without protecting their IP, they don't really have a business. And when people think about IP, they don't really think about the information that you put on your website, copyright material, or branding, such as the product or service that you are providing, or if it's be technical or functional things such as the invention idea regarding patents. So I'm excited and looking forward to convey the knowledge that I have to help you guys move along in your journey being an entrepreneur.
How exciting. Thank you so much. Now, it's interesting because the states where you all practice are kind of known for being some of the most difficult bars to pass. Let me just start with that. But also where there is so much creative potential, so many founders. I've actually lived in New York. I lived in New York City and Harlem, and I actually worked for the city and for a tech company while I was there. I lived in LA and had the privilege to work for the Walt Disney Company. And now I'm based here in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. So I know just how difficult it can be when you're trying to build and scale a business or build and scale an idea, and there's so much competition out there. And so we're going to get into talking about why IP protections can be so important for that process. But again, just kudos to all of you for the very important work that you do on behalf of creators and founders. So, of course, I have a corporate training background, so I couldn't let this time pass without just a little bit of training information. So, I just have a couple of quick slides, y'all. I'm not going to bore the group with too much information, but I'm just gonna share just a couple things to make sure that you have it. So let me pull it up. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Can you all see my screen? Is it sharing something? Perfect. Okay, here we go. So, again, we're going to be talking about in this four-part series all types of information related to intellectual property protection. But I really wanted to start and ground us in the why. Why would you even want to protect your intellectual property, your creations? And I think the why always determines the what and how. I know for me in business, it does. And so the very first why that came to me as I was developing this content was that we want to build generational wealth. So a huge part of why I started my own business to begin with is because I wanted to make sure that I left something meaningful for my future children, my future grandchildren, and even my future great grandchildren, that they could be able to leverage to create what they wanted to create. But if you're going to build generational wealth, that requires intentionality and planning. And a part of that intentionality is protection. The second why is that when we're scaling to our seven-figure and eight-figure businesses, we need to have structure and protection. So if you're going to scale, you have to protect what you've already built. Protect the foundation, protect the next level. So it's similar to if you're building a building, you would never see someone build a skyscraper and not put in the work to protect the lower levels of that building, even as they get to floors 30, 90, 110. They're going to keep going up and make sure that everything that is under the next level that they're building is well protected so that the entire structure doesn't come falling down. And finally, if you're going to thrive in the knowledge economy, so the economy that we're in now, we see so much that is revolving, excuse me, around knowledge creation, content creation, SaaS companies, right? Yes, we have physical products that people are still building, and that's extremely important. But even with the building of those physical products, there's also a component of knowledge to it that is invaluable. And we want to make sure that we have protected that through what I call legal savvy. So if you think about this why, again, building generational wealth, scaling to seven and eight figures, and then finally thriving in an increasingly competitive knowledge economy, which of those is probably most important to you right now? Which do you think matters the most? Drop it for me in the chat if you're able. Because again, the why is going to determine your what and your how. And so if you feel like you have a strong enough and a compelling enough why, the what and the how is going to come naturally. So quick pop quiz. What do all of these things have in common? We got Disney, McDonald's, Nike logos, the Jordan logo. We have the original iPhone, so the iPhone 1, the NBC logo, and of course the iconic Tiffany box and the Tiffany blue. All of these things have in common that they are protected through either patents, trademarks, or copyrights. And in some cases, they may have two or even all three. And the purpose of them protecting that, we're going to talk more about it later, but at a high level, it is to make sure that they are able to have exclusive control, benefit, and reward for the intellectual property that they've created. So the interesting part when I was looking it up, I was like, okay, what are going to be some iconic brands that I could be able to share that folks will know
Mhm.
right off the bat? We know and love these brands in part because of these pieces that they've chosen to protect. When you see that Tiffany blue, you already know I need to get excited because it's going to be something good in that box. If you showed any child under the age of 5 golden arches or Mickey Mouse's ears, you would know right away. Oh my goodness, we're about to have a good time. If you buy someone's shoes and it has that swoosh or that Jumpman symbol, you already know what to expect. And so it's interesting because we know and love these things for what we consume. But the real purpose of why I wanted to do this webinar is that I want to flip us from thinking in a consumer mindset to a producer mindset. Because remember, We are producers, we're founders, we're creators. And so we have to have a little bit different of a lens as we protect what it is that we're creating. So, with that being said, what is intellectual property? So, intellectual property is intangible creations of the human mind. And this is such a unique feature. I love language, and so I like to look up definitions of things. But I was like, man, like that's such a cool definition because our mind is constantly working and playing off of information, synthesizing, creating. We get sparks of ideas, and those ideas you can't necessarily touch them, at least at first. It's just something we came up with. But what you come up with, your ideas are worth protecting. And if you don't take away anything else that I've said from all four sessions that we're going to have, I think that would be one of the main ones. What you develop, create, build is worth protecting. These intellectual properties, right? They can be works of art, symbols, words and phrases, designs, and or images. So if we go back to this previous slide, so we'll take Tiffany for example. The color, the design, their box style, their name, all of that is protected. The same thing with NBC, the same thing with the iPhone, all parts. So I can't create a phone and call it iPhone. It's not gonna happen. There's no way. They got that on lock, right? I can't create a color and call it Tiffany blue. They got that locked in. Interestingly enough, NBC, I remember learning a fun fact about them when I was a teenager because NBC, the iconic chime and jingle, dun dun dun, if you hear it. So first of all, it's the notes are G, E, and C, which stands for General Electric Company. That was the original parent company, I believe that you would term it as, of NBC. And so it's literally somebody went on a xylophone and just played GEC to stand for General Electric Company. And now those three notes, if you hear it right away, you know you're watching something that is a part of the NBC family of brands. And so again, this could be music, it could be colors, it could be designs, it could be physical products that you set up, it could be a song, it could be lyrics, it could be a book, it could be a phrase, it could be any number of things. Again, it's all worth protecting. And so, as I mentioned before, IP or intellectual property rewards the creator or the trustee with prestige. So you get the clout of saying you created and made that, right? You get to be able to get the clout to say you made that iconic shoe, or you developed that iconic makeup, or you developed that iconic song. You also get the legal protection. So if somebody tries to take advantage of you or take your stuff, guess what? You have legal protections to be able to stand up for yourself and protect your creation. And finally, potential financial gain. So it's interesting. I remember it's a an artist, and she created these beautiful pieces of art that were depicting, different cultural elements. And somebody was taking her art and like just making their own like shower curtains, phone cases, all types of weird stuff. And she was able to come in and say, that's mine because she had protected her property. And of course, it went viral and things like that. I want to make a note about that because sometimes we rely on crowdsourcing legal protection. And while the court of public opinion can be helpful, right, in getting the word out, these intellectual property protections were created so that even if nobody knows what happened, right, you are still protected. And so I don't want you as a creator or founder to rely on the crowd to protect what could simply be protected through legal means. And again, we're going to talk more about that. So there are three types that we'll be discussing in the series, and that is patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Patents, copyrights, and trademarks. So finally, we're going to talk about the value of intellectual property. Again, that the value is that we get to shelter what we're creating as we scale. So if you think about, if you're building something, if you have a hole at the bottom of it, everything you put in is falling out. And so you don't get to hold on to it and really build and grow it because you're so busy trying to keep that bottom level together. This helps you to shelter those ideas to scale and grow. It also helps to protect you from poachers and copycats. So when people are trying to copy your ideas or trying to poach your parts of what you create and what you are building, It helps to protect you from that. And finally, it helps you to control your placement, your brand messaging, and your presentation. This is so important because, again, if you think about the iconic brands that we love, we know when a color is off, we know when a shape is off, we know when a word is misspelled. So I'll go back. I think Jordan is a really good example. So if you're like me and you didn't grow up with very much money, right? Instead of getting stuff like Jordans, maybe you got like I don't know, the jump person gym shoes, right? And you would know right off the bat, like that's not those are not Jordans, right? If you think about ladies who love purses, I'm a Coach girl. I know when something is the Coach symbol and the Coach logo. I know if something is the Louis Vuitton logo. I know if something is the Gucci logo, and we can spot fakes and phonies because it's just something just a little bit off, right? Instead of maybe the iconic Gucci stripes, maybe it's a different color in there. And you're like, wait a minute, that's not it, right? Maybe instead of the polo player on the horse is like something a little different. Again, you know when something is off. And so the goal here is to be able to protect your brand's messaging, placement, and presentation because the goal is to grow and scale what you're building. And it has to be that level of recognition to accomplish that because people need to recognize your brand in order to grow your brand. So, if you had to think about which of these values are most important to you right now, would it be sheltering ideas, protecting from poachers and copycats, or controlling your brand's presentation, messaging, and placement? Which matters most to you in this phase of your business? Drop it in the chat for me. And I know we probably have people from all over. So we are live streaming right now to YouTube, to LinkedIn, and here on Riverside. So thank you so much to all the people who are viewing and checking us out. Which is most important to you? I know for me and my business, the protection is pretty high, but honestly, my biggest concern was to be able to control brand messaging. So, as an organizational psychologist who practices both consulting and coaching, my field is overrun with people, and there are very few barriers to entry. And so, how most people in consulting and coaching grow their business is, honestly, I hate to say it, grabbing onto somebody else's stuff and then putting their spin on it. So by me filing for copyrights, trademarks, and making sure that I'm protecting what I'm building, I'm able to make sure that nobody can take my unique ideas for trainings, coaching frameworks, etc., and changing just a word, right, or a letter, or just putting their stamp on it. Because again, that's my own creation, and that's what differentiates me in the market. So again, my concern right now is on controlling that brand messaging, controlling that placement. I'm very careful with how I show up in the market. I'm very intentional about that. And I want to make sure that I protect the integrity of my brand. All right. So, Elizabeth, Judy, and Xavier, if you had to think about just of the folks that you've seen in your experience, which of these values do you think has been most important for folks and top of mind for the people you've seen?
Well, Kaylin, I'm happy to jump in here. And let me just say, I'm really excited that you've set the table for a really robust discussion by, putting out these thought questions and these thought statements. Because you're right, people are creators and protectors and don't always think about it because it's not something we're ever taught in school. Sadly, we are all creators and users of intellectual property, yet very few of us are ever introduced to the concepts that we're talking about here: patents, trademarks, copyrights, even trade secrets. But yet, we all enjoy the lives we do because of these forms of intellectual property. Um, to your point of which one matters most to individuals, um, I think it depends on where people are at in their innovation journey. Um, I think the one thing I would say with respect to wherever you are at and whichever one of these is most important to you is just the simple fact that you're thinking about intellectual property. because particularly as someone who is looking to start and build and grow a business, you should be thinking about intellectual property at every step of that business process. As you start to build the concept, as you start to grow and decipher what it is your endeavor is, um, and you need to be having those conversations throughout the process. Intellectual property protection shouldn't be a rainy day project that I'm getting to get to when I have more time, more money, and a better appreciation. You called out the need for legal savvy. I know it's something that people are always like, oh, well, I've never been to law school. I'm not an attorney. I can't be savvy. Well, then hire some good help, and never be afraid to ask for help. People like Xavier, Judy, contact the US Patent and Trademark Office. We are there to help throughout the process. Um, so I, I think one of my key takeaways from our conversation today, and just to put it out there early on, and something that I'm sure I'll repeat again, is to think about your intellectual property early and often, and to never be afraid to ask for help, because as you're thinking about all of these different things, all of these different needs and uses for intellectual property, the more you think about it and the more you practice it in building your business or in building your endeavor, the more successful you're going to be.
I love that. Thank you so much. Judy or Xavier, you want to hop in?
So I echo
Yeah,
Elizabeth. Go ahead, Judy.
sorry. Yeah, I wanted to add to what was already said. I believe all three things listed here are very important. And I would say intellectual property actually, while I feel like it's the most important from the business I work with, it will be kind of a combination of the last two, in the sense that, for example, trademark really helps you distinguish what you're providing, whether it's you're selling a good, you're selling a product or a service. You have to distinguish yourself from your competitors. And for example, if you have any creative creation, then copyright helps you to protect your ideas and really monetize based on that. So really, it's like a mix of things. And like Elizabeth said, it's so important to start thinking about these things early. It's hard, I understand, like to when you're running a business, you tend to want to focus on something else, but this intellectual property law really like lays the foundation for you to really grow to the next level.
So from my point of view, I echo everything both panelists have said. It comes down to what is your business objective, which is going to determine what intellectual property, because it's a strategy, because you're going to be using all of them. Depends on what your business is. For example, I had a client come to me because they want to get patent protection in the United States. This it's a good thing to come to me early before they actually do something, because if they were to actually use their invention idea in the public, that can bar them from getting patent protection in another country such as Europe and so forth. So it's a great idea to come in ahead of time, but a lot of people are not aware of that. So there's a lot of little pitfalls that you're not aware of that can cause issues in trademark protection if you have the wrong owner. Some things you just cannot fix, or copyright protection. So it's a balance of looking at, okay, what are your business objectives, and how do we get you to attain to achieve those business objectives based on the intellectual property strategy that supports those business objectives.
I love that so much. So words always stand out to me. I heard innovation, I heard strategy, I heard the combination of values and how important that is, differentiation. So if you think about that, I like to put keywords that I hear and think about and that stand out to me in a sentence. The strategy of differentiating your innovation. That could be an overarching theme for our conversation. What is your strategy for differentiating your innovation? It probably requires some level of outside support, whether that is doing research, hiring legal help, which I always advocate for. So, quick sidebar with that, and we're gonna talk more about that in the next webinar. But I couldn't have done it without the attorney that I had for filing my stuff. Not only because I'm not a lawyer, right? But also because there are certain things that are time sensitive that honestly I'm running a business. So I don't have time to always sit and give it the level of care that it needs. I always tell people famously, admin work, I do it at like midnight. I'm not good on putting together invoices and scheduling and stuff like that. Takes a whole other part of my brain. So when I have to do things that are that detail oriented, I do that stuff like at midnight when the world is quiet. Well, guess what? As something that is as important as IP protection, you really want to be focused. I don't have time to do that at midnight. My lawyer has time to do that during the day, right? They have the expertise to be able to figure that out. And then also, I think the other benefit was helping me not to panic. So I had a couple of office actions at different points, and to me, it was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna go bad. And she was like, nah, they're just asking this. Like, do me a favor, like change this word here because if this says this, this is what that means, or helping me select the right class that would be appropriate for how I wanted to scale services so I wouldn't have to double back later. Right? Those little things, that level of expertise, that is the value of having the right support. And so, on that note, I'm actually going to drop in the chat because the USPTO has some amazing resources. And so, let me copy this. If you just want like an intro teaser to be able to understand more about what is it that I should be thinking about with trademarks versus copyrights versus patents, there are again amazing free resources. I cannot stress that enough on the USPTO's website. Last point that I'm going to make before we go into the panel discussion and questions. Um, I want you to be aware of potential like fakers and scammers. Again, we're going to talk way more about this in other sessions. But how I differentiate really anything for the government, but especially related to this, if it is not uspto.gov, is not necessarily that it's wrong, but it doesn't come directly from the USPTO. So that uspto.gov, if you go to the website, they have an abundance of resources for you to be able to check out, things to find out, ways to understand what to do, how to do things, etc. So again, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that because as soon as you file, you're going to start getting all types of important looking notices in the mail, I mean, just all kinds of stuff, and it's gonna seem scary because it's gonna look real official, but it's not really from USPTO. It is from potentially some well-meaning actors, but it's not them. So again, just make sure it's that USPTO.gov. All right, so now let's get into our panel discussion. So again, we're going to be hearing from Elizabeth, Xavier, and Judy, and doing a roundtable. And just to make it easy for us, I'm gonna just like call out who to start us off, and then we can just kind of go round robin style with the questions. So the first question that I wanted to get for the listeners is what are the key considerations for creators and founders who want to protect their creations? So again, just what are some key considerations to think about? And Judy, we'll start it off with you, and then we'll go to Xavier and finally Elizabeth for that one.
Yes. So from my experience, because I help with both the business transactional side of things and intellectual property, the first thing that come to mind for me will be actually as the business owner or the creator yourself, do you really own that piece of intellectual property? So there are situations where when you're a creator, you're being hired by someone, either as an employee or a contractor to create something, to design something. Are you the owner of that? It really depends on what that agreement says between you and the person that hired you to do the work. So there's that first concern, who is the owner? And as a business owner, there are times where people who are a great business person, but they don't know how to do a digital drawing. They don't know how to design their own logo. They needed help putting things like putting their ideas into reality. Then you hire somebody. So that this is super important to stress that whatever you think you want to protect is actually yours. So I would say that's the first step. And then the second step for me would be identify the right type of protection. So in the business world, as I've seen, copyright, trademark, patent, these things are used interchangeably and sometimes incorrectly. So I would say it's really important to talk to legal professional to really identify the type of protection that's um, really going to protect what you're trying to protect and file it correctly. Like Xavier mentioned, certain things you have to do before it's public, certain things you actually want to start using before or like as early as possible. For example, trademark in the US is use-based jurisdiction. That means the earliest user have common law trademark right by being the senior user of the name. So for trademark, you want to start using it as early as possible. But for patent and copyright, there are sometimes you want to seek legal protection before it's public. So there's that important difference for business to keep in mind. Yes, that will be my thoughts on this topic.
As always, I echo what Judy just said, in 100% agreement. What one thing that Judy mentioned, which is very important. So, for example, dealing like with trademarks, you have somebody to design your logo. You can hire a design company. Whoever creates the logo has copyrights. So you want to make sure that those rights are assigned over to you, whether it's through some type of what do you call it, independent contractor agreement, or if somebody for your business that works in your business as an employee that they transfer the rights over. Because a lot of times when I'm speaking to clients who have designers on the trademark side, have somebody design their trademark logo, that's one of the first questions I ask. Do you design this yourself or do you hire somebody? Do you have copyright transfer over to them? Now, in terms of key considerations, it really comes down to what you're trying to do. Because I know intellectual property is kind of confusing, so I'm going to provide some clarity. So think of copyright is protect the creative expression of an author. So how you put words together in a book to convey some type of meaning, or how you paint something, it's the creative expression that you're protecting. From a trademark, it operates as a source identifier, meaning that when you see a product or service in commerce, you knew it came from a particular source. I look at it as this way: it's more of a consumer protection. So as a consumer, you can trust that brand or whatever you see, the logo and so forth, has a certain quality to it. Patent on the other side, it protects the inventive concept. So how something functions, it has to be tied to something concrete, by the way. So for example, the iPhone, you may have the communication between towers, or it may be a design pattern, how something, no ornamental look on it. So all those has a key integral play. There's not no key which one first and so forth, but it comes down to what you're trying to do. And I also forgot trade dress. Trade dress is not public. And when you think of trade dress, think of Coca-Cola recipe. So it has unlimited protection as long as it remains secret. You can have it forever. The first three I mentioned has a duration time period that expires. So
Well, I'll jump in here, Kaylin. I echo both what Judy and Xavier said, and well said, both of you. You've really hit the nail on the head with respect to things that people really need to think about, particularly as they're getting started. I'll also go back to a word that Xavier used earlier, and that was to create an IP strategy. Because just as Xavier just spoke about the different forms of intellectual property, as an individual, as a creator, as a small business owner, you may be creating, and in all likelihood, are creating things that are protected by the multiple forms of intellectual property, which are all going to then be incorporated into your IP portfolio. As exciting as that sounds, that's right, you're creating an IP portfolio. Don't you feel important already? So to know the different types, and to Judy's point as well, there is a lot of confusion out there. I can't tell you how many times I hear from somebody, "Can I get a patent on my copyright? Can I trademark my patent?" No, these are all very different, distinct forms of intellectual property, yet they can all play together for a recipe of success and to serve as the building blocks of your company. So to have that strategy as you're moving forward, knowing that there's these multiple things moving, um, I think one of the other things I always like to impress upon people is that the intellectual property system is open to all of us. No one is too old or too young. Um, that's the beauty of the US intellectual property system. It was designed by our founding fathers. It's as old as the nation itself, and it is open to all of us to take advantage of, to use for our success. It's in fact why we have grown as a strong and industrialized nation, is the fact that individuals, authors, and inventors have used the intellectual property system successfully and created things that we have all come to know and love. So to know that, because all too often I hear people say to me, "Oh, I'm not an inventor. I'm no Thomas Edison." You know what? We all need new creations which solve problems in our individual lives, in the lives of those in our family, our community, our world. Some of them are simple, some of them are complex, but they can all be protected by intellectual property. Again, if meeting the rules and regulations of the various forms of intellectual property, but that we all have an opportunity to participate in the US intellectual property system.
I love that so much. Thank you all for just those thorough answers. It's interesting because that idea of participating, but also having a strategy, and then also just thinking about getting clear about those differences between them, super important. I remember when I was gonna file for my first trademark. And I was like, wait, am I really going to do this? Is it worth protecting? And in my head, I pictured somebody taking advantage or just taking my, business name or the logo and just using it for their own thing. And I'm like, that's mine, right? I felt almost territorial. And that emotional trigger has now led to something so much bigger than me, right? That I can have something that I can hang my hat on and say it's mine. And it's interesting because my previous work experience includes working at companies like Amazon, like Disney, for the cities of New York and Chicago. And when I think about those brands, working and being a leader in those companies is what helped me to see how beneficial it can be, right? Like we know these logos, we know these brand slogans, we know the things that they have patented and created. Like we know them, and we know them because they protected them. And I remember thinking, I was like, yeah, one day I'm going to be them too. So I need to make sure that I've protected what I've created. And you got to have a little bit of arrogance with that. Like, emotional arrogance is a little bit of a consideration too. Like, puff your chest out a little bit. Get excited about what you're building because it's worth protecting. It's worth protecting. All right. So, second question: how can creators and founders benefit from layering IP protection? So, we talked about that with that strategy. How can they benefit from layering IP protections, which is obtaining two or more? So, for this one, I'm going to start with you, Elizabeth, and then I'm going to go to Judy and finish up with Xavier.
Oh, fantastic. And this is a great follow on to the conversation we just had, because this goes back to creating that IP portfolio. A company is going to use these various tools of intellectual property in various ways. Um, we like to say that some companies have something protectable by a patent, but maybe not every company. But yet, every business, or nearly every business, has something protectable by a trademark and a copyright. And because they are different forms of intellectual property, they're used very differently. It's going to be important to have those multiple forms because you're going to use them in different ways to protect, to create revenue, to create identity, to create the story of your company. I'm particularly a fan of trademarks, and I love that you've had the experience, Kaylin, of getting trademarks, because trademarks not only provide an indicator of the source of goods and services, the strategic work you're doing for your clients, but it also tells your story. And I think that's so very valuable in bringing customers in helping to commercialize what it is you're doing. So whether you're creating an artifact, an actual product which is going to be protected by a patent and then hopefully commercialized, or whether it's your goods and services that you are providing as a small business owner, using that trademark again to commercialize your brand. Um, I- Again, All I can say is it goes back to that IP portfolio because they're all used in different ways. It's important to not just get focused in on one form of intellectual property.
Hi, sorry, took me a while to unmute. I will piggyback on what Elizabeth has said and elaborate a little more on trademark. So, trademark is used to help you distinguish your business from others, and there are many types of things that you can file a trademark as, not just your business name. So, a lot of famous example, Nike. Nike has their swoosh logo, which is a logo. Nike has a slogan, "Just do it." All these things are little things in their business that are used to distinguish their goods and services from other competitors. So if you file trademark, you will need multiple of them. As Nike, for example, you will need one for the name itself as a word mark. You will need one for your logo, and you will want one ideally for composite mark, which is both logo and the word together. And then you will consider filing one for your slogan, which is used different. It's like something separate from your brand name itself, but it's also something that you're used to distinguish your business from its competitors. There are also some other very cool types of trademark. It's actually trade dress. For example, the scent of Play-Doh. I think everyone probably have played it as a kid. The little really fun squishy things. They have a very unique scent. That scent is trademark. So it is something this business is using to distinguish themselves from others. And that's something that should be trademarked and protected. One last note on multiple intellectual property protection is that I always encourage my clients to file separate applications for different classes. A lot of times, one business will be doing, for example, they have a store that sells something and they also creates the product itself that sells it. Take clothing, for example. You make t-shirts, apparel that's branded as a brand, and then your store also is the retail service. So those 25 and 35 are different classes. If budget permits, I always encourage my client to file separate applications for it because if one of the applications encounter an office action, it will not affect your registration in the other class. So that's a major benefit of multiple layers of intellectual property protection by separating them into different applications. It will allow you to separate the risk there.
I don't know where to go with this question. I've been thinking about and contemplating this entire time. So I think, well, first I want to address what office action is real quick because a lot of people don't know what the heck an office action is. So if you ever file a trademark yourself or file a patent application yourself, and the office action is probably, you look at the scary thing that you get from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Essentially, it's a letter stating that, hey, there's an issue with your application. In order to overcome those issues, what you have to overcome those issues to move your application along in the registration process, whether it's on the patent side or the trademark side. So to kind of give a concrete example regarding how the interplay of intellectual property works, let's imagine that you own a software company, software as a SaaS. So, for example, it could be like Google search engine or some type of online platform where people use your software. So your software may be unique. You may use artificial intelligence or blockchain technology or a combination of both to help make and improve a process that's already out there. So that comes down to like patent protection. So that'd be one thing. So you want to file a patent application to get that protected. So that prohibits other people from making and using your invention idea in the United States and also importing into the United States if it comes from a foreign country. Now, in addition to the patent aspect you're doing, you think about branding. Okay, how do I get my business, or how do I get my product name out there? It may not be your actual business name. It's whatever your product, how you want to brand it, how you want to be known in the public sphere. So that's the trademark protection. Now you're also producing copyright material. It may be on your website. It may be how your display with the software application looks to the public. So those are three different interplays. Now, that's just, I just want to bring that example to make a concrete, just kind of set it in people's mind because I used to teach and tutor. And the best way for people to learn is have something they can recall back and think about. So in terms of value, so I actually had a client that got patent protection and also trademark protection. I didn't handle the patent aspect. It was software application, even though I do work on software applications. I handled the trademark, and come to find out, they sold their business for like millions of dollars. I just happened to see it on LinkedIn. So, it is very valuable, and the most, from my point of view, the most valuable asset is the intellectual property. If you were to look at the accounting statement of, let's say, Coca-Cola, you see something called goodwill in it. So if you liquidate the entire business, you have the assets like the building and so forth, and compared to the goodwill, which would be intellectual property, is going to dwarf whatever the actual, what do you call it, tangibles. So, and with that, I just leave it.
Yeah, all I can say is wow. I hope y'all are taking notes on this, like, and you gonna go back and listen to the replay because this is a master class. And this is one of the reasons, also, again, I'm gonna get into that in the next session, but this is why you want that support because a huge part of strategy is knowledge. And you can't be a subject matter expert or SME in everything. I have my zone of excellence. It is not trademark law, right? It is not intellectual property law. That ain't that. I do something else. And so by being able to partner with the right folks, have the right information, you can make good decisions. As these illustrious presenters have shared, this stuff costs money too, to file things, to go back, to check things, sometimes do the research, to build prototypes, to do the research to build what you're building. You don't want to have redundancies where you're having to pay for things multiple times because of a simple piece of information that you missed, right? Or a piece of your strategy that you missed. And so if we were to think about what are the key considerations for a strategy, it would be time, knowledge, support network, and then finally commitment, because it is a process, right? This is not an overnight thing. I think the longest one of my application processes has taken was like 9 months. And again, because I had the support, I knew, look, while I'm building the business of my dreams, this thing is running in the background and we making it happen together. And that's so important because again, you're worth protecting. What you're building is worth protecting. All right, last question in the last couple minutes that we have. Can you all share how creators and founders might understand the importance of class selection when filing? So, we talked about the classes, and I know Judy brought it up, but that class piece is super important, especially for folks who what you do could fall into a number of classes. But can you share what is what should they be considering, what should they be thinking about in selecting the right classes? And so in this order, I'm going to start with Xavier, then move to Elizabeth, and then end with Judy.
So, as a practicing trademark attorney, I recommend that you hire somebody who's experienced to do the handle your trademark. Even in the United States Patent and Trademark Office, in the office sections, if you are pro se, i.e., representing yourself, tells you go hire an attorney because things can get done much easier. Now, with that said, classes, or also known as international classes, the way to view is to look at, well, first, USPTO has a classification system for all goods and services are classified on its particular classes. The way to look at it is like the industry in which you are providing your goods or providing your services. So a lot of people are into clothing, fashion, so that'd be class 25. So you want to make sure that you have the right class, because if you have the wrong class for your goods and services, which typically happens when people, let's say you have software and it's downloadable software to be class 9, but you classified in class 42, which is non-downloadable software. That misclassification can lead to you not pretty much lose your money. So, but it's not particularly the classes an issue. It's the description that you have for your goods and services, because the goods and services you can only clarify or delete, but you cannot add any new matter to it. So just like concrete, once you pour it, it settles, i.e. following your application, you cannot change anything except for clarifying or removing it.
Oh, Kaylin, I'm happy to jump in here as well, although I'd like to broaden the question out just a little bit because I'm going to leave it to Xavier and Judy to really hit on the trademark classes. And um, fir- first and foremost, I would say it's a question of education. And you started our conversation today by wishing everyone happy holidays. And I want to congratulate everyone for giving themselves the gift of education today by being here with us in the education that's here, but also the resources that you can use after today's event and well into the future. And one of those is I encourage people to visit our website, particularly those who are just getting started in intellectual property protection. Visit us on the web, www.uspto.gov. We have not only fantastic training materials and descriptive materials available on the website, we also have a list of events that are offered every day of the week, Monday through Friday, on a wide array of topics, one of which is an 8-part trademark boot camp class. So if you really want to know about trademarks, I strongly recommend our trademark boot camp class. Another resource that I'd love to call out, and just very quickly, is our patent and trademark resource centers. Our Patent and Trademark Resource Centers, or PTRCs, is a network of now 100 libraries across the nation, publicly available libraries which have one or more librarian trained in patent and trademark searching. They won't conduct the search for you, but they will help you to understand the tools of searching and how to do a thorough search so that you can determine if your idea is just so great, maybe somebody's already thought of it or not. So I encourage the use of our PTRCs, and you can find them on our website. Again, they're located across the nation because these are going to help you do that deep dive into understanding the trademark classes that uh, even patents are broken down by technology area as well. So patent searching is a thing to know when preparing your patent application.
So yes, add to what Xavier and Elizabeth have already said. I want to mention that for copyright, there are not classes, but there are several different types of applications that you can choose to file to protect your work. For example, if you have a series of photographs or a series of writing, there's a specific type of application that you should choose rather than filing the normal application and filing independently. That will save you a lot of money and potentially like talk to a copyright practitioner, a lawyer to identify what's the right type of application for you. Um, and then adding to class identification and the USPTO website, actually, there is a trademark ID manual available online. So I would say that's a good place to start for a business if you just want to figure out what might be the right class. You can go on that website. I don't know the exact URL off the top of my head, but it's called Trademark ID Manual. And you can find it and kind of type out what you think you want to protect, and it will tell you what are the accepted description and the class number for that goods and service. Um, Lastly, I wanted to say something. I'm blanking right now. um, for Sorry, I'm blanking right now. I will come back if I think about this.
It's okay. Listen, y'all have dropped so much information. Like, I'm honestly shocked. I mean, y'all are rattling this stuff off. This is how you know when somebody is good at their work, because the way you all are able to describe this so effortlessly is just like nuts to me. This is crazy. This is amazing. I want to thank you all so much for appearing today. And I've been dropping in the live stream chat how folks can contact you, where they can go on the USPTO website to access the resource centers, the learning resources. So all of those things are in the chat. If you're tuning in from LinkedIn or YouTube, I'm going to be sure to add these resources in the comments so that you can be able to get that information too, because it's important, right? This isn't the end of the conversation. This is just the beginning. So, first of all, this is session 1 of 4. So, we got 3 more coming up on December the 18th, January the 8th, and January the 22nd. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat of where you can go to register for the remaining sessions in the series. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of you in these sessions. The next session, we're going to be talking about USPTO resources and legal allies. So, getting deeper into the conversation of what does support look like in this process. We're also going to talk about success stories in the January 8th webinar. So, what does it look like for people who have done this thing and done it well enough to get what they were going after, the protections that they needed? What did they do? What was their strategy? And then finally, and this is going to be my favorite one, I'm sure, on January 22nd, we are having an open Q&A with lawyers and attorneys who are going to be able to give you um, their own expertise, their own information about this process. And so I'm really looking forward to that one. I think y'all are going to love that one. But all the three sessions that preceded is going to build that foundation so we can make the most of our time. So I want to thank you so much to Xavier, Judy, and to Elizabeth for joining us today, especially coming off of the holiday. Thank y'all so much for showing up, and not just showing up, but really showing up and being present. I appreciate you all so much. I dropped links in the chat of how you can stay in touch with them. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next session. Thank you so much. If I don't catch you again before Christmas, though I hope I should on the 18th webinar, happy holidays to you all. And of course, Happy New Year. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kaylin.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So the live stream should